Leinen, what's, in your opinion, the most interesting part of the foreign policy of the EU at the moment? Is it Ukraine? Is it Syria? What is it?
Unfortunately, we have a whole crisis belt in our neighborhood, in the eastern neighborhood and even more in the southern neighborhood. So we have a war in Europe and we have many civil wars and wars around us. So there is a full program for the High Representative and the Council to have a European neighborhood policy with one voice and coherent and very, let's say, strategically.
But let's look upon the situation when it comes to Ukraine. Is it at all possible to do anything from the side of the EU, or is everything like a war without anyone winning?
Now we know very well that Russia is invading directly or indirectly the east of Ukraine and Crimea, and therefore the dialogue with Putin, as difficult as it is, has to be continued.
But it needs two for a tango, as one says.
Yeah, we have a mixture of dialogue and sanctions, and I think the sanctions, besides the falling oil prices, do a lot of pain in Moscow and in Russia. And I hope that the next summit, whether it is in Astana, in Kazakhstan or in Minsk, it is possible that we have a dialogue and we continue to find a way out, saving faces for Putin as well, of course, for us to pacify Ukraine.
And when we look at the conflict in Syria, and the problems Turkey is facing with a lot of refugees from there, is there a conflict in the approach of the EU towards Turkey? On one hand, you are blaming Turkey for violating human rights, arresting journalists, and on the other hand, you have to help Turkey.
And no doubt, Jordania, Lebanon, Turkey, they are suffering from practically millions of refugees. We have an outcry in Europe for 200,000 refugees a year, and they have more than 1.5 million in a small territory. There is solidarity necessary and an intensive cooperation. We can help. Europe is a rich part of the world. We have to help much more. But we have as well to ask, especially from Turkey, some help as well. It is well known that European jihadists take the route via Istanbul and Turkey, and it looks like they have no problem to enter Syria. And I think that we have a whole bunch of questions to discuss with Turkey.
You have a transfer of refugees via Turkey to the EU. How to handle that one?
Yeah, the latest big boat coming into the neighborhood of Italy was clearly coming via Mersin. They even talked about how they came from Syria to Turkey, take a plane to Turkey and then the boat to come to our waters. So I think dialogue with Moscow, dialogue with Ankara are the main issues in these months to come of the year 2015.
Elmar Brok, the European Union is under pressure in a way. It has to be having an opinion on all kind of foreign affair matters. Where lies at the moment your priority? What's the most important foreign policy matter to deal with right now?
That is difficult to say. We have to see the breach of the international law in Europe. For the first time, Russia using military forces to occupy parts of a country and annex it. We have in the Middle East a situation when such a brutality against all different opinion in religion and ethnical relationships and so on. We have the situation that you cannot anymore divide between external and internal policies because of terrorist acts, cyber acts, but also the trade mechanism with Russia, for example, because of that. That means that we have to develop an overall approach of foreign policy which combines all that parts. which have to do with energy policy, with climate change, with keeping international law and human rights, and at the same time develop our own strengths, make it to one point. The Europeans have to understand that only together they can cope with it. The Americans and others have under the same pressure as we are. Perhaps is it more in our neighborhood, but everyone has to do it, but we Europeans have to learn that we can cope only with that together.
But if we look at Ukraine, Russia, do you see any kind of improvement in the current affair there?
Not in practical terms. It is still a policy of containment at that, but we do not see the implementation of the Minsk agreement, which is a condition for lifting sanctions, and therefore it was not very positive that the Astana meeting this week had to be cancelled because no tangible results were possible because of the summit with the four presidents and the German Chancellor. And therefore I think we should make it to Russia very clear that they cannot hope for the lifting of the sanctions, and we will renew them in March if there will be no positive development in the implementation of the Minsk agreement.
Do you foresee that only an economic pressure will lead anywhere?
Look, we have decided not to wage war because of Ukraine with Russia. Then the sanctions is the instrument to tell Russians that the aggressive method is too expensive for Russia. And it starts to work, combined with the oil prices, combined with the lack of modernization of the Russian industry. And we hope that this will come to an understanding that Russia went too far and that Russia will find ways that international law can be renewed again.
When we look upon Turkey, you might have a very special, difficult problem there, because on one hand, Turkey needs to be supported when it comes to the refugees, the extreme high number of refugees coming from Syria. On the other hand, you have to blame them for the violation of human rights. Journalists are arrested and so on. And you have to blame them for allowing refugees to pass through Turkey and enter EU by ship. How do you overcome that difficult problem?
Sometimes I'm astonished how similar the internal development in Russia and Turkey is. Putin and Erdogan, I fear, in the same way, away from democracy to an authoritarian leadership. That makes it more difficult for us to deal with them. But also with Turkey, it would be, is it clear that we would like to have Turkey on our side. We should keep good relations, not because just of economic reasons, but of security reasons and many other reasons. And therefore, I think we should find a new method which has not the immediate aim to make Turkey a member of the European Union, because this is not possible because of the internal development, but to have more common interest in energy policy and other questions, also in fighting fundamental Islam. But this is all again very difficult because Erdogan is very much interested in supporting fundamentalist Sunnites, and here is sometimes we do not see the difference between Muslim Brotherhood in Egypt and other places and Erdogan's policy, and this makes it more and more difficult.
Final question. When you have heard the High Representative, Vice President of the Commission, talking about her ambitions for solving international problems, do you believe it's possible for her to achieve anything?
I think she has a will to find a new way of European policy, to come more to a comprehensive approach, which was not existent, while this comprehensive approach convinced the member states and the European citizens that we have to do things together. And here I believe it must be done: politics, security policy, internal security policy, economic developments, trade matters, that has to be mixed together to one strategy in foreign policy. And I have the feeling that she tries to come to such a comprehensive approach.
Where would you advise her to focus on?
I think she must have a clear strategy which is convincing, which explains that we have to see things together. The points on the plate, but we have to put it visible together for our citizens and for our debate with the national capitals to make that work.
And when you say we, the Commission, she and the Parliament?
The European Union institutions.